You too. So today we're going to go over the interesting concept of inconvenient consequences. And so, why would we go over something like inconvenient consequences? Well, I think it applies to the three individuals and the clips that we're going to look at around these individuals with Anna Kasparian, Bill Maher, and Richard Dawkins. And the reason these are inconvenient consequences or unintended consequences, I think that's a reasonable thing to say as well, is that each one of these three individuals, if you don't know who they are, I'll give brief descriptions of each one of these individuals, but each one of these individuals has been promoting the very society that we find ourselves in today. But I would argue, based on recent things that every single one of these people has been saying over the last year, maybe 2 years, they're starting to not like the consequences of the very societies that they push for. Every single one of these individuals has pushed against religion, traditional values, Christian moral ethics, on and on and on, conservatism, Republicans, all of that. Each one of these people has railed against all of those ideas, ideologies, and institutions around those ideas and belief systems. However, what they're starting to see, in my opinion, they're not liking. Because when you remove a core foundational principle of a civilization, something like a religious belief, like Christianity, it will get replaced with something else. You may not like the traditional values or things like that around Christianity or Christian moral ethic, but when you have no good thing to replace it with, which these people do not, that their ideology is incoherent, it has no justification for anything. All of these people, particularly Anna Kasparian and Bill Maher, have pushed for rampant individualism. And when you push for an individualistic ideology like that, whatever I feel, however I need to live my life is how I need to live it. You live your life however you need to live it. You have no justification for any societal cohesion. You have the makings of chaotic nonsense, which is exactly where we find ourselves today. And these people are starting to not like it because it's starting to negatively affect them. Even though these massive hypocrites, these giant hypocrites, which they're atheists, they don't care if they're hypocrites. I want Christians to understand this. These people do not operate under the same value system that you operate with. So all the conservatives and all the Republicans and all the commentators that, look at how hypocritical the left is. Look at how hypocritical this atheist is. They literally don't care. They're atheist. An atheist is telling you they have no justification for morality. They have no objective standard for anything. They're literally telling you their personal preference is what guides their life. There's nothing bigger and beyond that. What feels good to them, man, that's how they live their life, man. And it could change tomorrow. And it could be completely different from atheist A to atheist B, which is why you can't build a cohesive, coherent society on a lot of what these people have preached over the decades. So I'm not going to go over how, here's an example, here's another example of hypocrisy, here's where Anna has, contradicted herself or any of that kind of stuff. We'll go over a few examples here and there, but really we'll go over examples of, particularly with Anna Kasparian, just how incoherent her ideology has and how it can be used against her. But these people should not be let off the hook. Just giving them some credit, they're at least being intellectually honest in these clips. Because as time goes on, it looks like these people are starting to regret the results of the very society that they push for. When you take down something like Christian moral ethics or Christianity that was a foundational pillar of the West and the United States and places like that, you replace it with secularism that has no objective standard for anything, because these people have promoted Again, rampant individualism. You have no you have no objective justification for any type of standard. You may have not liked traditional Christian moral ethics and the traditional family and things like that, but at least there were standards there to prevent a clown show from happening, which is exactly what we have. All the slippery slopes that people were talking about, the pastors and evangelical pastors that were made fun of probably by these very people, Bill Maher and all these people, trying to prevent and debate certain issues that are just celebrated at this point. They were 100% right. Not only were we on slippery slopes, we are now tumbling towards the dark, just godless, chaotic abyss of nonsense. So we're going to go through a few clips of these people because I find it fascinating that these people are starting, in my opinion, it seems based on what they're saying, and they're starting to get a little more and more vocal about this stuff as time goes on. But these people are starting to not like what they see, the logical consequences of things that they push for. So first few clips are going to be Anna Kasparian, and we will go ahead and get started.
Toward the trans community. I think medical providers absolutely should face consequences. But the idea that we should change all of our terminology, even toward women who want to be called women, in order to be inclusive is ridiculous to me. Now, if a transgender person wants to be called that, fantastic. I respect it. I'll do it. I'll engage in it. But I think in the context of my relationship with my doctors, I want to be called a woman. It's not that difficult. It is my personal preference.
It's her personal preference, which is literally her entire ideology, is her personal preference. You have your right to do this. I have a right to do that. My personal preference is for me. Your personal preference is for you, as long as it doesn't infringe upon my personal preference. You can't have a coherent, cohesive society around things like that. That's why libertarianism doesn't work. This is why, honestly, this is a very good argument that the logical consequences of a society like that and what we find ourselves in today is a very good argument for something like Christianity. Christianity recognizes the fact that people are not inherently good. That doesn't mean that there aren't good people, but people are not inherently good. People are also not inherently bad. As a Christian, I believe people are inherently flawed. We're flawed. And if you leave man to our own devices, flawed human beings in a fallen, flawed world, if you leave us to our own devices, we will degrade and just push and push more and more towards degeneracy into chaos. You have to give us rules, laws, regulations, or we will create chaos. That's why libertarianism and this liberal idea of just freedom to do what? From what? You have to have standards or it will just degrade into chaos. That's what these people don't understand. They can't even begin to fathom the problems that we're starting to see right now. They just don't like it because it's starting to negatively affect their personal lives. But this is the very thing. It's my personal preference. Yes, your personal preference is irrelevant because you could have a million different personal preferences, which we do in a secular society. That's why we have 1,000 different genders because it's a personal preference of people to just be whatever they want to be, and which goes completely against this. Here's Anna, just clearly in a mature, well-adjusted way, going after, pro-life Christians.
These comments might be strong, but it's how I genuinely feel. I don't care that you're a Christian. I don't care what the Bible says. I feel like it's a clown show, sitting here trying to decipher what your little mythical book has to say about these very real political issues.
Yeah, it's a clown show trying to decipher what a bunch of stupid goat herders wrote, even though most of the Bible was not written by goat herders, for people that said that, talking about some spaghetti monster in the sky because we don't have a clown show today whereby you're making an argument for why your personal preference should be called a woman when you're obviously a woman. That's not a clown show. But what is a clown show is the promotion of not murdering the most innocent form of life in, a child in a mother's womb. Yeah, that's a clown show. But you and your personal preference of wanting to be called a woman because we can't define what that is anymore, that's not a clown show. Well, Anna, I don't care about your personal preference. I don't care that you're an atheist who wants to be called a woman. You as an atheist who want to be called a woman, that infringes upon my personal preference of wanting every doctor to call every woman or anybody who identifies as a woman, even though they may not biologically be a woman, a birthing person. Do you see how much of a clown show we actually find ourselves in? I mean, this is the results of it right here. But we'll continue.
Okay, that doesn't mean that I in any way believe that transgender people should be treated differently or that they should be discriminated against.
If you enjoy content like this, and make sure.
Yeah. So that's the end of the first Anna clip. Here's the next Anna Kasparian clip where she actually admits, and this is the point that, this is the second point just to drive home, that she's not liking the consequences of some of the stuff that she has pushed for. Here you go.
Like, yeah, why not legalize gay marriage? Like, what's wrong with that? Who's it hurting? But when it comes to
who's it hurting, I'm not gonna get into that.
Some transgender issues, there is a lot on the line, right? Like when we do talk about kids transitioning, you want to make sure that we have a system in place where there's a proper protocol implemented to ensure that we're not transitioning kids who might not actually be transgender.
So this clearly isn't a clown show, which this is you being bigoted against kids who may or may not be transgendered. Anna. And I don't care about your personal preference of wanting to have protocols in place. We had something like that prevented all of this from happening. Literally everything you're complaining about right now, we had a protocol for that, which I could have kept going in this clip here where she just gets even more yelly and louder about Christians that she doesn't care about their stupid, religious book that she doesn't care about.
You think it's okay to transition kids under the age of 18, even if the parents consent?
What do you mean, medically?
Medically. Anna, you seem very smart to me, and I think you have common sense.
Yeah, I do have common sense.
Debatable. Again, I'll throw her and other young Turk fans who may come across this video. She's at least starting to see maybe society has progressed a little too far.
I think it's a very difficult question to answer. Okay, I think that.
This week only, to celebrate our freedom, Daily Wire Plus is running one of our best deals of the year. Buy an annual membership and get a...
Nobody cares.
There was a time when I barely knew how to turn
another one. Hold on.
Now, I'm a cybersecurity specialist.
ECP.
It is a problem when certain states completely ban it because there are...
Look, let me know in the comments. What do you...
Why is that a problem? I don't really care about this commentator.
They're legitimately transgender. And I don't want to cause harm to those people, right? I think it's a decision that should be left between the parents and the doctors. But at the same time, there are certain things going on where I do worry. Like, I don't know if you guys have read about the Tavistock clinic in the UK that's shut down. And the reason why it shut down is because it just became this system of transitioning minors without really doing the proper protocol.
Oh, you mean it degraded into something that you didn't like that you disagree with because you haven't thought about the logical consequences for the stuff that you've been pushing. Yeah. You have no justification for any type of standard, Anna, which I'm not going to get into, but she eventually says something in here where people will shut their brains off. That's what I'm trying to get to, where she's admitting that things have gone too far in certain areas.
Calls to ensure that they're working with people who are legitimately transgender.
Okay, so you're 14 years old. I don't know if you said 14 or 13 years old. When your mom tells you, what do you want to be? You said, I want to go be an actress. So she's not going to be a Pachatsats, right? And you said, I'm going to go be a Barbara Walters. Why don't you go be a journalist? Okay, that's exactly what I want to do. And I go, okay. What if your mom doesn't say that to you? What if your mom doesn't put that in your head? What if you go into Hollywood? Maybe your life's going to be a different story today. I don't know what it's going to be, good, bad, or ugly, but it's going to be a different life.
Probably what.
But what I'm saying, it's going to be a very different life. I actually think you would, because you have drive, but it's going to be a different life, no matter what direction you would have gone to. But the point I want to make is with this whole concept of even entertaining the thought of it being okay before the age of 18, then that means, like my idea, I have a controversial idea. I would rather have a 15-year-old kid that has a job paying taxes vote than a 28-year-old person who's never had a job, never paid taxes. That person shouldn't vote. So Pompeo, you're out of your mind. I get it. It's not a normal idea that I'm proposing. You have the right to.
Sorry, I'm waiting on something for Anna to say that's going to make it obvious that she thinks that certain things have gone too far. So we'll keep listening.
You're out of your mind. But my idea is, I want to give people the right to vote who earned the right to vote, who have contributed to society, minus those who have disabilities, things like that. That's not what I'm talking about, or elderly. All I'm talking about is a 15-year-old person should have the right to vote, who is paying taxes, has a W-2 job, has paid $3,000 of taxes, whatever, versus 28-year-old who hasn't. But this concept of saying, yeah, I think my son told me, he's a girl, and we have to do this, and da-da-da-da, and they're crying, getting emotional. I think we have to be a little less tolerant to stupidity and insanity. If you're 19 years old and you say, like my kids will say, that my son is having this tattoo conversation.
Yeah, they start talking about tattoos, don't really care. Where does she say it?
Okay, so I think that I get uncomfortable.
It is his parental right, but I already know.
Let's see. Maybe
Make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It really does help me out a ton.
I have had an entire career defending them, supporting them, and this one issue led to ridiculous outrage among a fringe component of that community. They are not representative of the entire transgender community. And for that fringe component, if they think that they're going to shut me up and force me to say things I don't believe.
This is the left eating their own. This is the left eating their own. This is what happens when you have no standards.
They've got another thing coming. Okay, I'm going to say what I think. Every single time.
Do you think they're crossing the line a little bit and it's getting a little bit too ridiculous in certain sectors?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's admitting, quote unquote, fringe. I mean, what was fringe 50 years ago is not fringe anymore. The fringe matters. I mean, that stuff matters. I would even argue some of that is not the fringe. I don't think she's using the term fringe because she doesn't want to attract as much heat as she's getting right now, because she's being attacked by her people on her own side. But she's admitting that this stuff can progress a little too far. She just admitted that.
And
they turn people off with it. And again, it is a fringe component of.
Yeah, she has to emphasize that. She has to emphasize it's a fringe. It's not fringe when it's, right wingers or anything like that. It's, the entirety, they're all stupid and whatnot. But this is a fringe. Yeah.
The transgender community.
It's crazy to hear people on the left say things like this. It
Agreed. I agree. Yeah, where does she say it? Say want to be. Okay, well, there's another. Oh, in a part of that video, somewhere in that debate or talk on that show, she literally admits where people have turned their brains off. Where tons of people have turned their brains off, and maybe she says it's fringe again to try to justify not attacking too many people on her side of the aisle, but she's starting to not like the consequences, with even something as simple as being identified as a birthing person when she goes to the doctor. She's starting to not like and even admit that things have quote unquote progressed too far. Here's another individual, Bill Maher, big time atheist. Bill, what was it? He had a show. He's had a show on HBO and places since the '90s. Real Time with Bill Maher. I think he had there was a different show, or there was a segment that had a different name in the mid to late '90s where he had guys, like Christopher Hitchens and others on. Christopher Hitchens was actually a funny atheist. But here's Bill Maher not liking some of the things that he's seen, and actually being criticized by his own side for things that are going on in society today. Here's Bill Maher. This is a month ago. This is a month ago on CNN. So just listen to some of this.
Somebody who was, you were okay with all that, but you've turned.
I haven't turned. Yes, people have said to me, you make fun of the left more than you used to. And guilty, I have, because the left has changed. Now the right has changed.
No, the left is progressed, pun intended, further beyond anything you imagined, because you never thought about the logical consequences of the very things that you push for, Bill. You never thought about the logical consequences of, let's remove Christianity from a society. You never thought about, well, what is it going to get replaced with? Will I like what it gets replaced with? Will what it gets replaced with be worse? Yeah. You never thought about any of this.
Changed also, and even worse. I mean, the right doesn't believe in democracy anymore.
Yeah. I mean, really? Is that, we'll continue.
I mean, they've thrown their lot in with this sociopath named Donald Trump, who only thinks elections count when we win. Okay,
so I am going to bring up, just to demonstrate the level of hypocrisy with people like Bill Maher, we'll bring up this one example. Elections will only count, when he wins. Okay, here's Hillary Clinton.
As I've been telling candidates who have come to see me, you can run the best campaign, you can even become the nominee, and you can have the election stolen from you.
Yeah, okay, so, just literally, again, a lot of this stuff is low-hanging fruit. What I want to focus on is the fact that Bill Maher is being criticized because now he spends more time, admittedly, criticizing liberals and the left and atheists because of how the directions that things have gone based on values and things that he himself promoted.
Okay, well, that's worse. But it's not like the left hasn't changed also. So I'm going to call it out wherever I see it. I mean, there are things that have to do with, gender and race and free speech and just ideas about, you can be healthy at any weight, and gender is always a social construct, and maybe we should give communism another try, and maybe we should get rid of capitalism and the border patrol, and let's tear down statues of Lincoln. And
literally everything that he's criticized immigration reform, he's criticized, he doesn't care about other statues being torn down. It's just, again, I'm not going to demonstrate the level of hypocrisy with these people. These people are massive hypocrites. But look, Bill Maher is admitting that society, and in particular, the people that he would have agreed with years ago, they have progressed too far. The reason they have progressed too far is because of the value system that people like Bill Maher have pushed. That's the point. And he doesn't like it. He doesn't like it because now not only are they not tearing down, Jefferson Davis statues, they're tearing down Abraham Lincoln statues. Now, it's great if we have rampant immigration and things like that. But I mean, we don't want, open borders. Rampant immigration is open borders. What does it matter if you have closed borders if people can't move freely, but you still import 5 million? I'm not saying that's what the United States does, but you import 2 million people a year who are from societies that are nothing like your liberal utopia, Bill. You have rampant immigration from societies whereby not only do people are way more violently religious than your average evangelical Christian in the United States, they breed at a much higher rate than you do. People like Bill Maher don't have kids. He's childless. I don't even think he's ever been married. Maybe he has, but he doesn't have any children. I mean, I have far outbred Bill Maher. The people that are coming in from these very religious countries have way more kids than I do. But he just doesn't even think about this stuff. I just don't like it because they're tearing down the statues that I don't like. I mean, it's just, again, a lot of it very low-hanging fruit. But Bill Maher's admitting and starting to see some of the consequences. How legitimate it is, who knows, but whatever. It is somewhat interesting. This one is actually the most interesting. Anna Kasparian is not that interesting. She's not an intellectual. She's not even overly emotional, just young Turks, low-hanging fruit crap. Bill Maher, pretty much the same thing. Those two aren't very interesting. Richard Dawkins is actually fairly intelligent. I may disagree with him, but I actually think Richard Dawkins is, he's been very consistent with his beliefs around attacking Christianity and things like that and promoting atheism and, one of the four horsemen of atheists, which when atheists say things like, oh, atheism isn't a religion, but then they love people like this, who is one of the quote unquote four horsemen of new atheism. Well, that's kind of religious. You're definitely not helping yourselves, even though, yes, I understand that that's ironic, but it's ironic in a way that I don't think atheists really understand. Neither here nor there, but Richard Dawkins is starting to say some very interesting stuff. So here's a clip from him. This was a couple of months ago when he was being interviewed on LBC or some channel in the UK, I believe. But listen to this.
What would be your Easter message? I mean, I've said a few things. What would you tell the nation?
Well, I must say I was slightly horrified to hear that Ramadan is being promoted instead. I do think that we are culturally a Christian country. I call myself a cultural Christian. I'm not.
Very interesting from Richard Dawkins. And he actually brings up a very, very good point that I would piggyback off of what Richard Dawkins is saying right now. I think in the society that we live in today, particularly in America, I'll speak from my anecdotal standpoint, I think most people, or a lot of people, let me rephrase it. I think a lot of people who go to church today are what you would consider, quote unquote, cultural Christians. I've heard people call them churchians. There's all types of names for them. I would just classify them as cultural Christians. People who go to church and call themselves Christians because they like the positive benefits, the benefits of a Christian society and Christian community and a belief system and ideology and a Christian moral ethical system. They like the benefits of it with none of the responsibility. They go to church because their friends go to church, or their parents went to church and their grandparents went to church, and it makes them feel good. And maybe occasionally on the weekends they'll do something philanthropic that kind of every now and then makes them really feel nice. And their children go to Sunday school with other children who are hopefully not using profanity, and and are probably in, culturally a similar situation with their family where, there aren't spouses cheating on each other and, drunkenness and massive amounts of, drugs and all this other kind of stuff. I'm not saying that hasn't happened or doesn't happen, but in general, it's people who like the cultural aspects of Christianity with none of the responsibility, that aren't principled. They truly don't believe in anything. It's people who, when stuff gets tough, they will let the culture influence Christianity and not Christianity influence the culture for the sake of not offending people, or for the sake of, there's a couple who has a gay, a child of a certain, want or certain desires, and we don't want to ostracize them from the group or something like that. I would piggyback off of what Richard Dawkins is saying right now. That is a phenomenon within Christianity, which is why you see Christian institutions be inverted and preaching things that are completely not Christian. But again, Richard Dawkins liking a lot of the benefits of Christianity as opposed to other religions. He's not liking what's happening in the UK. But he himself is one of the most famous people, one of the biggest faces of atheism in the UK that has attacked Christianity relentlessly for decades. And he himself is not liking what it's being replaced with. You cannot have a cultural, moral, ethical void in a society. It will get replaced with something. It could get replaced with something much worse. And like I said, you cannot build a coherent, cohesive society on secularism around personal preference. That means absolutely nothing. If anyone can be a citizen of your society with any belief system because you have no standards, then no one is a member of your society because your society doesn't exist. If everything means Christianity, then nothing means Christianity because it has no standards. There is nothing to define anything by. That's the point. But this is something he himself is starting, I would argue, is starting to regret or not liking the consequences of. Removing Christianity, well, now what are you going to replace it with? It's being replaced with something that he's not familiar with, that he doesn't like.
Not a believer, but there's a distinction between being a believing Christian and being a cultural Christian.
Yes, as if believing has nothing to do with the benefits of Christianity that he himself wants. As if this is what cultural Christians don't understand. You cannot have Christianity, what you know as Christianity, without the core beliefs, without the belief around Jesus Christ, the Gospels, the Bible, the moral Christian ethics, people like me believing in something bigger and greater than myself to the point where I would sacrifice for it. I would sacrifice anything for it because it's the truth. Christ himself said, what does it benefit a man to gain the whole world but to lose his soul? That's how I live my life. I will not lose my soul. And I will teach my children that. I will teach my children, be fruitful and multiply. I will teach my children, love thy neighbor, pray for your enemy. Do not conform to this godless, moralless subjectivity of just consumerism and materialism. That is a horrible thing to build a society on. The core actual beliefs, the gospel of Christianity is where the benefits come from, Richard. Cultural Christians, atheists, you cannot have the benefits of Christianity without its core beliefs. As if there's no correlation or connection to them. I mean, it's crazy. It's just ridiculous.
So, I love hymns and Christmas carols, and I sort of feel at home in the Christian ethos. I feel that we are a Christian country in that sense. It's true that statistically the number of people who actually believe in Christianity is going down.
Yeah, is that a good thing? Do you like what you're seeing? Anna, Bill, Richard? Do y'all like what y'all are seeing with the decline in Christianity? No. You clearly each do not like what you've seen in the decline of Christianity. Again, I will read this Bible verse. I'll finish on these Bible verses, Proverbs 18, 1 through 2, because it completely and utterly defines every single one of these three individuals. Proverbs 18, 1 through 2. An unfriendly person pursues selfish ends, and against all sound judgment starts quarrels. Fools find no pleasure in understanding, but delight in airing their own opinions. I think that greatly defines each one of these three individuals. So hopefully this was interesting. Hopefully the phenomenon that you're seeing, because this is happening with others as well, is interesting. And I appreciate anyone from listening. See you on the next one.